Now let's get more on the ANC's 114th birthday celebration. We are joined by political analyst, Professor Susan Booysen. Professor, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. And once again, the ANC has promised to do things differently, but also better. What did you make of this year's January 8 festivities?
Well, Maso, certainly the 6 separate tasks that President Ramaphosa specified as essential for attention in the years to come are crucial ones, include fixing local government, transforming the economy, and dealing with corruption, those type of tasks. And there's a long list in there of things that need to be done. For example, given that it is the year of local government elections, and that the title of the statement promises to fix local government, it was with high expectations that I started listening and then studied the document. And yet there is, despite a list, for example, on local government, of about 35 things that are being done or need to be done or promised to be done, there is just such a paucity of new thinking, of creative thinking, of anything new that comes to the table, that it is with a sense of disappointment that one moves away from reading this document and earlier listening to it, because what is promised in there, and even if it's implemented with new vigor, new commitment, we do not see the evidence of new commitment and new vigor, either in the presentation or in the response from the audience at the rally, then it is probably a verdict that it's falling short on several fronts. Not enough commitment, passion, conviction coming across, and the content certainly falling short on several fronts as well.
And speaking about commitment and the passion and the conviction as well, before the statement was made and given by the president of the ANC, there seemed to be, of course, logistical issues when it comes to people coming into the stadium. There seemed to be a trickling in of getting bums on the seats. I mean, ultimately, it seemed there were much more people compared to in the morning. And then as we heard from the SG and, of course, our reporters who were on the ground who were saying that there were many more people who were outside. As to the numbers, we're not totally sure of the actual numbers, but there were many people who were stuck outside. Prof, if the ANC is struggling to get the logistics of getting people to a quite small stadium right, how are they going to be able to get the things that were said in the statement right when it comes to local government?
That is certainly a very important question. It was a very modest stadium, and in an area where the ANC had also done extensive what they call door-to-door recruitment and activation of the potential audience of the day, much transport arrangements in place, and yet it was still falling short. And that has increasingly been one of the characteristics of ANC gatherings. In many cases in recent years, we have seen that small tent venues are used instead of stadia. But for a big event like this, we can recall days when the biggest of the stadia in South Africa had been filled by the supporters, and the ANC has clearly moved beyond that era in its existence. The motivational speak is not as filled with conviction as it used to be before. And of course, the supporters, potential supporters of the ANC, have heard multiple of these undertakings and ideas and policies, projects, programs that are being referred to and were expected in advance to be referred to. They've heard it before, and it is an event that struggled to match with the era of disappointment and despondency, and South Africans increasingly not believing that any political party, and that includes the ANC, nowadays represents what they think they stand for, where they think the country should go. If they don't know, none of the parties are offering them those ideas of new directions, new ways of doing things. So it's a much alienation of South African politics and party politics that we see unfolding also through an event like this. And that has big implications for democracy moving into South Africa's future, for participation in elections and general democratic processes.
You know, when you're speaking about the statement lacking the conviction that it usually would have had, do you also think that it's also based off a week of hearing residents' complaints about service delivery, about potholes, but not only just hearing those complaints, but experiencing the complaints themselves? We heard President Cyril Ramaphosa saying, look, there clearly is a problem with the roads in the Northwest. This is nothing new, but then this was obviously again brought to the fore in the statement itself. So with that being said, and hearing all these complaints about how things have gone dire, and you're experiencing it and seeing it, are we even surprised that there was a lack of conviction?
We should probably not be surprised at all, even if one had still hoped that, given that the ANC and other political parties probably realized the seriousness of the situation, and that in ANC's own words, that it is a reform or perish, renew or perish situation for the ANC. One could possibly still have hoped that there is some new inspiration, a few new ideas, new ways of doing things, of motivating South Africans to get back to the ballot box that could have arisen from a speech like that. But yet I do not see that fervor, that renewed belief, preparedness by voters and citizens to come in again and say, let's tackle this, let's give it our all, let's do things to make the system work. There are alternative systems in many ways in place. If one listens to the president's delivery of this address on behalf of the ANC, of course, there are so many other ideas around local government of what should be fixed, how things should be done, what is required of councillors and ANC councillors in particular, that could help make a change. And yet, these things are 101s of municipal governance.
Prof. Booysen.
And if councillors in general, and particularly the ANC, yes?
I beg your pardon, please continue.
If the councillors in particular have not been following through so far, we do not see why suddenly now they're going to change and do things differently, except if it is a case of them realizing that they are probably going to lose their positions as representatives of the ANC, public representatives, should they not rebuild and reconstitute the support that the ANC once had, or that other political parties, if we talk about other ones, had in the past. So yes, there's a disjuncture between the needs of the time and recognition that we live in a time of alienation and disappointment, voters moving away from participation, and ability of the political parties to pull them back in.
And I appreciate you finishing your thoughts about the councillors, because in his address, President Ramaphosa said councillors who steal money from the taxpayer and don't do their work will be removed. Now, based off history, is that the case?
Not so easily. A handful of councillors and public representatives and municipal officials have been removed in the past. Generally, there are prolonged processes, or if the councillors are really, and some public officials, have really been confronted with inescapable, devastating evidence against them, then there are often quick resignations and moving away from those positions so that they can still, without having a record of disciplinary action against them or convictions against them, go and apply for a new job in another place, often a similar job, just in a different council. And we definitely have not seen effective action in the past. It's always as if the ANC in this Bday case, particularly the ANC, fears that should they take definitive action against councillors and public representatives or officials, then those people may turn against them, may run to another political party, may even form a new political party of their own, and thereby take away from the ANC support that it had recorded in previous elections. So one certainly gets the idea that it's often the ANC balancing the odds of keeping its voter constituency relatively intact. And the same thing can also be said in terms of corrective measures on municipal governance that President Ramaphosa also delivered today. And there we talk about payment against vandalism, illegal connections, that there should be action against that. And we know that the ANC and its councils, and in other cases, other political parties too, when they've been in charge, other councils, have not been effective in doing that. And because it is a general, often poor, not inevitably poor, community that is responsible for the lack of compliance with payment regimes at local government, sometimes they generally have poverty as an issue. Quite often they do not. But the ANC doesn't act because they are afraid of alienating that constituency, whereas their own policies may not be sufficient to cover for the desperate need that many in the communities face. But it's very difficult for the ANC to differentiate between those with genuine need and those who get away opportunistically.
And now, Prof, before I let you go, I want to just talk a little bit more about the statement, the overarching theme. The President outlined 6 key factors to focus on, from, as we've spoken about, fixing local government, to speed up economic transformation, wage war on crime and corruption and GBV, make organizational renewal visible, and 2 more factors as well. From these 6 points, what did you make of it? Because, for instance, on the point of waging war on crime and corruption and tackling GBV, in that one point, that is, probably the bulk of our problems in the country.
Yes, there's so much concentrated in that, the violence, corruption, GBV, plus the femicide aspect connected to it. The quality of life of South Africans are really totally affected. And as it's also remarked, that crime kills, poverty kills. And it is in that context that much attention, quite a few words were devoted to these issues. And yet there is no new directions, no new inspiration that we see emerging from the statement. I do not believe that the statement is sufficient in generating hope in South Africa that the year may deliver something new, something different. And of course, it is this election year, and a statement like this almost equates with an election campaign statement. And one would really expect that much more ambition, new, reinvigorating ideas would be coming forward to give South Africans hope, to motivate them to remain engaged with the system, and at least to be able to believe that politicians have that fervor to address the problems that face and affect the fibre of society to its core, in a sense of especially GBV and crime and corruption are concerned.
Prof. Booysen, always such a pleasure to get your insights. Appreciate your time this evening.